There comes a moment quiet, subtle, almost invisible when your soul whispers what it's been trying to scream for years. Choose yourself. And most people ignore it. They drown it in obligations, in noise, in the need to be liked. Because choosing yourself is not celebrated. It's not applauded. It's not even welcomed. It's punished. This world has trained you to believe that putting yourself first is selfish, that your worth depends on your sacrifice, that your goodness is measured by how much of yourself you're willing to give away. And so, piece by piece, year by year, you disappear. You give your time to people who drain you, your voice to people who don't hear you, your loyalty to people who wouldn't bleed for you if roles were reversed. And what do you get? Burnout, bitterness, an identity you don't recognize staring back at you in the mirror. But underneath all of that, there's still a spark, a quiet knowing that says, you weren't made for this. You weren't made to live on autopilot. You weren't made to beg for breadcrumbs of love. You weren't made to be a background character in your own story. And the day you decide to listen to that, knowing the day you choose yourself, fully and unapologetically, is the day everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, but because you do. You stop looking for home in other people. You stop waiting to be saved. You stop giving away the pen that writes your story. Because choosing yourself means returning to yourself. It means unlearning everything the world taught you about who you should be, so you can remember who you truly are. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what he didn't say is that it will cost you everything that isn't you. And that's what most people fear. Because choosing yourself means loss. Loss of approval, loss of comfort, loss of false belonging. But what you gain is freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you no longer betray yourself to keep the peace. The kind of freedom that comes when you no longer measure your worth by how easy you are to digest. The kind of freedom that comes when you finally understand you don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing, your growth, or your boundaries. You don't owe your presence to people who only loved the version of you they could control. You owe yourself the life you were born to live. And that begins the moment you say, I choose me. Not the masked version, not the performative version, not the agreeable, diluted, socially acceptable version. Me. Unfiltered, unshakable, undeniable. But choosing yourself is not soft. It is war. War against the conditioning that taught you to stay silent. War against the shame that rises every time you say no. War against the ghost of who you were taught to be. You will lose people. You will disappoint them. You will be called selfish, cold, difficult. But you won't flinch, because you'll know anyone who abandons you for choosing yourself was never truly with you to begin with. And when that noise fades, when the smoke clears, something extraordinary happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. You begin to move differently, speak differently, breathe differently. You stop explaining, you stop defending, you stop negotiating with guilt. You walk into rooms with the quiet confidence of someone who knows. I belong wherever I choose to be. You don't wait to be chosen. You are the choice. And this is where Syphoria begins, not the fleeting high of validation, but the grounded ecstasy of finally being aligned. Your body relaxes, your mind quiets, your energy sharpens, because everything inside of you is no longer at war. You are not split. You are not scattered. You are no longer a patchwork of other people's expectations. You are whole. And from that wholeness comes power not. The kind that needs to dominate, but the kind that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't chase peace. You are peace. You don't chase love. You are love. You don't chase purpose. You are purpose in motion. And the world begins to respond. Opportunities shift, energy shifts, people shift. Because when you choose yourself, you change your frequency, and that frequency becomes your filter. You start to see who really honors you, who truly hears you, who shows up without being asked. You stop entertaining connections that feel heavy, forced, or transactional. You no longer confuse loyalty with bondage. You realize that love without freedom isn't love, it's ownership. And you will never again be owned. Because now you walk with a different kind of vital presence, so rooted, so grounded in self-ownership, it unsettles those still living in performance. You don't speak to be heard. You speak to resonate. You speak when your truth is ripe, not when approval is expected. The moment you chose yourself, you became dangerous. Not to the world, but to every structure that profited from your compliance. You stopped playing by rules you didn't write. You stopped tolerating dynamics that stole your voice. You stopped being digestible. And that's when you started being real. You began noticing the subtle manipulations, the guilt trips dressed as concern, the expectations wrapped in praise, the transactional love that always came with a price tag. And instead of accommodating, you confronted. Instead of complying, you corrected. Instead of explaining, you exited. This is what alignment looks like. Not perfection, not invulnerability, but sacred refusal. Refusal to abandon yourself one more time just to be understood by people who were never listening. You began building a new reality one choice at a time. You chose silence over noise, solitude over desperation, depth over popularity. And every choice rewired your nervous system, rebuilt your psyche. You were no longer available for environments that made you doubt your own worth. You were no longer responsive to people who only noticed your absence, never your presence. And the loneliness, it came. But it didn't break you, it birthed you. Because when you spend time alone, something ancient awakens. You remember your voice. You remember your rhythm. You remember that before you were conditioned to serve everyone else, you were sovereign. And in that remembering, your mindset transforms. You stop asking, am I too much? You start asking, is this space too small? You stop shrinking to fit fragile egos. You stop absorbing projections. You stop bending under the weight of unspoken expectations. Your standards rise. Not because you think you're better, but because you finally see clearly. The energy you used to spend chasing approval, fixing others, explaining your boundaries, you reclaim it, you redirect it inward, into your vision, into your discipline, into your becoming. And now your mind becomes your ally, not a battlefield of self-doubt, but a sanctuary of self-belief. You no longer believe every thought, you question them. You audit the inner dialogue and cut out anything that doesn't sound like truth. Because the mind, when untrained, is a tool of the world. But when mastered, it becomes your freedom. You no longer seek certainty, you create clarity. You no longer crave validation, you embody value. You no longer fear rejection because every no reveals a deeper yes within you. And this belief, this grounded, unshakable belief in your own worth, it changes how you move through the world. Not with entitlement, but with intention. You know who you are. You know what you bring. You know what you will and will not accept. And because of that, you no longer need to prove anything. You are no longer controlled by reactions. You are driven by vision. And that vision begins to crystallize not as a fantasy, but as a direction. A North Star only you can see, but one you now trust with every cell in your body. You stop waiting for signs. You stop seeking permission. You act. You execute. You lead, not out of ego, but out of alignment. Not out of urgency, but out of obedience to your soul. Not because it's easy, but because you can no longer live any other way. You're not here to fit in. You're here to build what you've never seen. And now that you've chosen yourself, you are finally free to do it. And when you move from this place, this inner sanctuary of clarity and conviction, everything begins to reorient itself around your truth. Not immediately, not without resistance, but inevitably, because your energy no longer negotiates with chaos. You no longer tolerate environments that dilute your essence just to maintain a false peace. You no longer force connections that require you to shrink. You realize now that the greatest betrayal was never them leaving, it was you abandoning yourself to get them to stay. But that betrayal is over. You've called it by its name. You've mourned the masks. You've buried the parts of you that begged. And from the ashes, something unshakable has risen. You no longer ask, what do they think of me? You ask, what do I think of this? How does this make me feel? Does this reflect who I've become, who I've been trying to outgrow? This shift, this unapologetic return to your own perspective, it's what makes you ungovernable. Because you no longer dance for approval. You create, you decide, you discern. Your clarity becomes a filter. Not everyone will pass through it. And that's not only okay, it's necessary. You were never meant to carry the weight of everyone else's comfort. You were meant to lead by example, to show what self-honoring looks like, to walk so fully in your light that others either rise with you or fall away. And now you begin to understand the true meaning of purpose. Purpose is not something you find, it's something you remember. It's not out there, it's in you. It's the blueprint embedded beneath every layer of fear, shame, and survival conditioning. And when you choose yourself, you finally have the space to hear it. The voice that was always there, whispering in the quiet, this is not your path. This is not your pace. You were not made to be silent. And when you listen, really, listen, purpose takes form. It may not be glamorous, it may not be marketable, but it will be true. And because it's true, it will move mountains. You will begin to build not for validation, but from vision. You will begin to act not from pressure, but from power. Discipline becomes sacred. Not because you're grinding to prove anything, but because you refuse to abandon the version of you that is waiting on the other side of consistency. You begin to rise early, not out of punishment, but out of reverence. You begin to cut distractions, not out of fear, but out of focus. You begin to choose discomfort not because you like pain, but because you value becoming more than escaping. You become dangerous to everything that once controlled you. Not because you resist it, but because you've outgrown it. And now your presence alone speaks for you. You don't need to defend your decisions. You don't need to explain your elevation. You don't need to justify your joy. You are no longer asking life to be easier. You are rising into the kind of person who can hold more truth, more vision, more responsibility. And in this rising, you begin to experience something you've only tasted in glimpses. Peace, real peace, not numbness, not avoidance, but the peace that comes when you are no longer at war with yourself. You are not hiding. You are not hustling for your worth. You are not managing everyone else's emotions while yours rot in silence. You are finally home, not in a place, in a state called self. And when you live from this state, when you are anchored in self, not swayed by the winds of projection or praise, you begin to see clearly. Most of the world is addicted to externality, addicted to being seen, not known, addicted to being followed, not felt, addicted to being liked, not loved. But you've chosen something rarer, something wilder, something deeper. You've chosen integrity over image. You've chosen truth over trend. You've chosen evolution over acceptance. And that choice rewrites everything. Because now your actions come from alignment, not from lack. Your boundaries come from overflow, not fear. Your solitude becomes sacred, not a punishment, but a portal. You no longer fear being alone because you've met the one person who will never leave you, your own soul. And once you've met your soul, once you've sat in the quiet fire of your own knowing, everything false becomes unbearable. You can't go back. Not to shallow conversations, not to diluted love, not to half-lived truths. You've developed a taste for the real, for intensity, for stillness, for substance, for freedom. And that freedom, it shows. It shows in your decisions, in your refusal to participate in dynamics that dishonor your spirit, in your willingness to be misunderstood by others, just to remain understood by yourself. You've stopped folding. You've stopped flinching. You've stopped entertaining people who treat your energy like it's expendable. And because of that, you are finally aligned with something bigger than survival. You are aligned with destiny. Not the fantasy kind, the kind that demands everything from you, the kind that carves you down to the bone, the kind that says you are not here to fit in. You are here to remember. You are here to reclaim. You are here to rebuild. And now that you have chosen yourself, you are no longer scared of the cost, because you've seen what it costs to not choose yourself. It costs your peace. It costs your clarity. It costs your voice. It costs a life you could have lived, but not anymore. Now, every morning you wake up is an act of rebellion. Every boundary you enforce is an affirmation. Every step you take toward your truth is a rejection of the lies you were raised on. You are no longer performing. You are no longer pretending. You are no longer pacifying the parts of you that were born to disrupt. You are the storm, the shift, the silence that speaks louder than the scream. You are the one who remembers, the one who rebuilds, the one who chose themselves and never looked back. And because you never looked back, the world had no choice but to shift forward, not to accommodate you, but to respect you. Because now your energy is not available for negotiation. You are no longer someone who gets pulled into emotional chess games. You are no longer someone who explains their intuition just to ease someone else's discomfort. You are no longer a soft place to land for those who only show up when they need something. You have become a mirror, and not everyone can handle what you reflect. Because you reflect what is possible when a person refuses to abandon themselves. You reflect what is rare in a world built on conformity. A sovereign soul who walks with both fire and grace, with boundaries and compassion, with power and peace. And that reflection either inspires or exposes. Some will rise. Some will recoil. Some will resent you, not for hurting them, but for healing yourself. Because your healing holds up a mirror to their stagnation. Your clarity highlights their confusion. Your freedom challenges their cages. But you do not dim. You do not descend. You do not dilute your becoming to appease those still undecided about their own. You keep walking. Because choosing yourself was never just about you. It was about what you activate in the world when you stand in your full power. You walk like a revolution now, not loud, but undeniable. You speak with precision. You move with intention. You hold space, not for validation, but for truth. And that truth is this: you will never again betray yourself to belong. You will never again sacrifice your peace for proximity. You will never again confuse access with intimacy. You now understand that presence is earned. That energy is currency. That love is not proven by endurance, but by alignment. And the more you live from this place, the more you attract the rarest kind of connection, mutual elevation. People who meet you at your frequency, who don't need you to shrink to feel safe, who don't ask you to explain your light just because they haven't found theirs yet. People who honor your boundaries as deeply as they honor your brilliance. People who have also chosen themselves and therefore know how to love you without ownership. This is what happens when you choose yourself. You stop surviving. You start selecting. You stop settling. You start shaping. You stop breaking for people who wouldn't bend for you. And you start becoming someone who will never again need to beg for what they were born to embody.